We heard you speak earlier in the week at the summit in Glasgow, addressing those world leaders. They were all sitting in front of you. What is it you wanted to say? What was your message from the Pacific Islands to the rest of the world?
I had very limited time. I only had 2 minutes, and the main message I wanted to send was for them to watch their words in COP and to also know that we're not drowning in the Pacific, that we're fighting and we're also resilient. We're resilient and not just victims.
How are you feeling the effects of climate change in Samoa, in the Pacific Islands? Because world leaders talk about climate change happening right now. And in your case, it's on your shoreline, it's on your doorstep.
Yes, we live with the consequences of inaction. And so we see the change in the weather, the coral bleaching, the fish stock declining, the increase in cyclones, the heavy flooding, the long drought, everything that you would imagine the climate crisis looking like for you or in bigger countries for the future is what we're experiencing in the present.
Brianna, do you felt heard? Because there were so many young speakers at the summit in Glasgow, and it really does seem to be young people that are pressing this sense of urgency, because we say, it is our young people that are going to inherit the earth and end up dealing with this mess. Are you feeling heard?
I feel seen, which is different from being heard. I think we will only truly know if we've been heard once the actions start following the words of COP. And that will only come after COP, when the real work begins.
It's so hard, isn't it, Brianna? Because you feel, what more can you do? You are telling them firsthand how climate change is affecting your islands. If it continues as it is, it will devastate your islands. So you are giving them firsthand account of climate change happening right now. You do wonder what more you could do.
Yes, and that's why we keep showing up to these COPs, why we keep on showing up in this space, is because even though we might not know the thing that will finally make change happen, we keep doing everything that we can and we keep showing up because the cost of silence is too big of a price to pay for us.
It's entering the final days of the summit in Glasgow, and this is when the decisions start to be made. I think there's 197 involved parties in these negotiations in the final days to get some concrete commitments, to get a time frame, to get a timetable, to get a method of reporting back so we can see how countries make progress. What is your call to action to those negotiators as they head into these final days?
The call to action has always been as simple as ambitious mitigation that we know it is keeping fossil fuels in the ground and ending all exploration of these industries that feed the climate crisis and moving towards a more sustainable and renewable energy source for our planet. We know what's destroying us. We know it has to end. And it really will just take that political will to finally get us over those goals that we've made for so long. And a second ask for Pacific Islands in particular is around climate financing, is how do we make sure that justice is found by the nations who are living with the consequences of climate change, but have done so little or have not even made like a little speck in the global emissions. And so it is adaptation and it's mitigation and making sure that those goals and those targets are as ambitious as we need to be.
Yeah, that is one of the big decisions that's being made at the end of this summit, how they control the flow of money across borders to make sure that developing countries and smaller islands like yours are helped. You started your journey as a climate activist at the young age of 11. And I just wonder what your hopes for the future are now. How do you keep being seen as you are now, and how eventually do you think you'll be heard? Because after everybody leaves Glasgow, you need to keep this up. This momentum needs to keep going if we're to get anywhere.
My ultimate hope for the future and what I hope can come out of COP is that young people no longer have to come to these summits. Is that I've talked to so many young youth activists who, because of the time of year, they've missed their prom, they've missed their graduation. I missed my prom and my graduation because I was at COP. as a teenager, I was at COP21, and it's like this cycle is continuously happening, and these activists are getting younger, and there's becoming more of them because we know this crisis, and we know that climate leadership can be led by us. And so my hope is that the adults at the table can finally have that political will, like I said in the beginning of this interview, to do the right thing so that our young ones can be kids and not have to show up to conferences on the other side of the world.
Well, Brianna, thank you so much for talking to us. As you said, you only had 2 minutes to speak at COP, but it definitely made an impact, and you've made an impact with us here this evening. Brianna Fruean from Samoa, from the Pacific Islands, speaking up for her islands and the effect of climate change, and talking about what needs to be done to save not just the Pacific Islands, but as you said it in your speech, save the Pacific Islands, save the world. Brianna, thank you.
Thank you for having me.